In this video, I'm going to give you 10 things that you should know before you get a betta. I've kept many bettas over the years, and I'm going to give you some of my best tips, including all the important things that will help you keep your betta successfully. My tip number 1 is going to be to feed your betta a variety of different foods. I know a lot of people will just buy a container of pellets from the store and feed that every single day, which is totally fine if you're starting out. You can survive on pellets, but if you want them to be healthy and show off the best color, it's essential that you feed a diet containing a variety of different foods. In the wild, bettas eat a wide range of stuff, insects, larvae, and a bunch of other stuff that keeps them alive. What I normally like to do is rotate between high quality flake foods, some freeze-dried foods like frozen bloodworms, and once in a while a piece of fruit like a tiny piece of banana or apple that I find. You can also feed live. This is going to help keep their diet balanced, and it gives them all the nutrients that they need to color up and just stay active overall. Brands like Hikari, Fluval, Extreme offer foods that are specifically tailored to what your betta needs. These can come in pellets or freeze-dried bloodworms. There's all sorts of different foods for bettas they provide. The other part to this is to feed them little. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make when keeping bettas is that they overfeed. Bettas actually have a really tiny stomach, which means that they can't consume a lot of food. And bettas will consume basically whatever you put in there. So it's really important to feed them little. I wouldn't feed them anything that they can't consume in 30 seconds. And yeah, make sure you feed them a varied diet and also feed little. My second tip is to keep bettas in good water quality. The thing about bettas is that although they're considered easy to care for, one thing that really affects them is bad water. Bettas are super prone to diseases like fin rot or dropsy that are caused by poor water quality. So they're very sensitive to water issues, and the things you need to avoid the most are high ammonia and nitrate levels, and this can be caused by a variety of different reasons. Ammonia and nitrates basically come from fish waste, uneaten food, and when ammonia levels rise, they're going to burn the betta's gills, which makes it difficult for them to breathe. You'll see them gasping at the surface or looking super stressed out. So it's very important to not overfeed, and the other thing you could do is help provide a lot of plants in the tank, more of which I'll talk about later, but these will do a fantastic job in soaking up the excess waste, ammonia in the tank, and use those as fertilizers to grow. Plants are going to do such a great job at keeping the water more healthy. They're going to act as a natural filter in the tank. They're going to soak up all the nasty stuff in the water and really just do a wonderful job at keeping your tank clean. The third thing you should know about keeping a betta is to keep them in at least a 5-gallon. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is they get a betta and they put it in a tiny fishbowl or a really small tank. Bettas are one of the most mistreated fish in the hobby. There's so many examples of that. But one of the most common mistakes people make is not giving the proper tank size. I think a 5-gallon is a bare minimum for a betta. Can't really go any smaller than that. If you're keeping just one, I would recommend anywhere between 5 to 20 gallons. Another really important reason why you need at least a 5-gallon is because smaller tanks are going to have water that fluctuates a lot more rapidly than larger tanks. It's a lot more stable if you have a bigger tank for a betta. Even if something goes wrong, it's not going to affect them that much. In smaller tanks, however, like 3 gallons, for example, the ammonia and nitrates are going to build up extremely fast, and even if you do water changes every single day, that's going to swing the water constantly, which is something you don't want to do. It's also much easier to add a filter, heater, plants, everything you need if you have a 5-gallon or bigger. The fourth thing you should know about bettas is to actually choose a good betta fish. There's a couple important things you should look for when choosing a betta. One of the first things I would look at is the type of betta. I'm referring to short fin bettas and long fin bettas. I want to dive into this a bit because I don't really hear this mentioned a ton. Short fin betta fish basically have shorter fins. They're much easier to take care of than long fin and are also hardier because they tend to be a lot less inbred. One example of this would be the playcat betta, and these guys have fins that heavily resemble the wild types, and plus they're super hardy, so these are something you could look into. Longfin bettas, on the other hand, are basically bred to have long and fancy fins, and over time this has made a lot of them weaker. You're also going to see them become less active as they age, as opposed to shortfin males and females, which continue to stay interactive in their older years and are generally more healthier. Another factor you should consider with this is whether or not you're going to have tank mates that are fin nippers. A lot of species like guppies or serpent tetras really like to go after bettas with longer fins, and this is going to cause a lot of harm to your betta. It's going to hurt their fins, stress them out. For those reasons, I highly recommend looking at short fin bettas. These guys are really underrated, and they're honestly much easier to care for beginners. When it comes to picking out a healthy betta, some things to look for are, first of all, make sure the betta is active. Are they swimming around? Are they staying active in the tank? Now, if the betta's in one of those tiny cups, that'll be more difficult to tell, but you could still check by putting your finger near the cup or at the top and seeing if they respond. A healthy betta should start swimming at it right away because they'll think it's food or something. You also want to check if the betta's got any damaged or nipped fins, any visible deformities. You definitely want to avoid those. I would also look for any signs of gill flukes. These are like tiny parasites that cause your Betta's gills to get kind of inflamed and swollen. That's something you definitely don't want, so if the gills are not looking normal or if they're frantically gasping for air, those are going to be red flags and you want to avoid getting those. My tip number 5 is to add some botanicals in live aquarium plants. These are some things I recommend to every Betta tank, especially plants, because they help establish a natural ecosystem. They serve as natural filters, take in a lot of the ammonia and nitrates. Something else I would recommend are botanicals. These things are great at making the water more like a Betta's natural habitat, where there's all sort of leaves, debris, wood at the bottom, and this could easily be imitated in your fish tanks with botanicals. Stuff like Indian almond leaves are especially good with this. Any botanical really would be great. Just make sure they're Betta safe and that you add them in properly. Botanicals are also very beneficial for your Betta's health. They support their immune systems and also release a ton of organic compounds and minerals. Finally, botanicals are going to release tannins that condition the water to be a lower pH and create that soft tea-color environment that your Betta will thrive in. The 6th thing you should know about keeping a Betta is that they actually enjoy having a place to rest. Not because they get lazy or tired like us, but more because it makes them feel secure. There's a couple different ways you could do this. A lot of people like to go for the Betta hammocks. It's this nice little thing where you place it at the top of the tank, and these are a cool resting ground for the Betta. An easier and more natural method is to add live plants with big round leaves like Anubias or Amazon swords. Anubias especially is an excellent choice. They don't need a deep substrate or anything like that. They actually don't even need a substrate. You could just put them in whatever Betta tank you have. Now, hammocks are good for Bettas for a couple of reasons. First of all, they provide a nice resting spot. Bettas actually spend a lot of energy swimming around all day, and they do actually need a place to rest, especially for those with longer fins. It helps them feel safe and allows them to have a nice break. In the wild, a lot of Bettas like to rest on plants, so this is something that also imitates their natural habitat. Your Betta is going to have this nice bedroom spot to hang out whenever it feels like taking a break, and plus a lot of Betta hammocks that are for sale are really just a leaf, a plastic leaf, so might as well get a real one. My 7th tip for keeping Bettas is to keep them in tropical waters. This is very important when keeping a Betta because Bettas are tropical fish. They need warmer water to keep their metabolism going, and it's also going to be a lot healthier for them. Warmer water is going to do a great job in keeping your Betta healthy, and it boosts their immune system, which is going to make them less likely to get diseases like fin rot or ick, even digestion issues like bloat, which can be very, very nasty. On top of that, they're going to display their colors a lot better in warmer temperatures. I recommend setting the temp to around 77 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 to 28 degrees Celsius. In my experience, I found them to do best at around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, wouldn't go anywhere lower than 75. I think anywhere from the high 70s to the low 80s is going to be a really good range, and your Betta is going to like it a lot. My 8th tip is to keep your Betta with peaceful tank mates. When it comes to tank mates, with Bettas it can be a bit tricky because we could be talking about either male or female Bettas, which is completely different. With male Bettas, it's very tricky because they're not exactly the best community fish. There's a lot of options that you wouldn't want to put them with because they're going to fight, or maybe just that the male Betta could attack, like smaller tetras. But with female Bettas, you have a lot more options. So females are not as aggressive as males. You can keep them in community tanks. Female Bettas are a lot more flexible with tank mates compared to males, and they can usually live in a community tank with other peaceful fish that aren't going to damage their fins. Some examples of good tank mates are ember tetras, neon tetras, rummy nose tetras, coolie loaches, autocinclus. I used to keep a female Betta in a community tank, and everybody got along. Bottom dwellers are also okay. Fish like bristlenose plecos, corridors, loaches. These guys usually stay at the bottom while the Bettas stay at the top. So I would avoid fin nippers, which are going to give your Betta an absolute nightmare. Serpe tetras, for example. And also larger territorial fish like cichlids. Basically, you want to avoid any fish labeled as aggressive, or fin nippers, or anything that might attack fish with flowy fins. Again, I recommend if you have a community tank, keep them with female Bettas. It's just so much easier. They're going to get along with basically any peaceful community fish that are around similar size. The next thing you should know is that Bettas are not low maintenance pets, and I see this because these guys are often perceived to be beginner fish, and it's very common to see these marketed as fish that live with very low needs, low standards, that they don't need a big tank, etc. It's very misleading because Bettas need a lot to actually flourish. They need proper space, clean water. It's a lot more than just tossing them in a tiny bowl or cup and thinking they'll be okay. On top of that, Bettas are incredibly sensitive to their environment. I've mentioned that water parameters need to be stable, they need good filtration. I recommend getting a sponge filter if you want to easily create low flow. Another reason why plants are important is because they create a nice source of shade. Bettas oftentimes can get stressed from high lighting, and I would try to have plants that are taller that provide some kind of darkness or cover to resemble their natural habitats. It's also a good idea to add a lid to the tank because bettas are known to be avid jumpers, so I would err on the side of caution of things and always provide some sort of cover. It could be as simple as a bug flying around and your betta decides to take a chance, take a leap, who knows. You also have to perform regular water changes, about 20% once a week, but this could heavily depend based on the amount of plants you have as well as your tank size. General rule of thumb, if you're not sure, is going to be 20% a week. Once you do everything correctly, these fish are super rewarding. One of my favorite maintenance tools I use is the Ciora water changing siphon. This was sent to me from our sponsor Ciora. It's a fantastic tool to easily maintain your aquarium for water changes or gravel vacuuming without needing to get your hands wet. The difference between this and a simple tube for water changes is that this siphon allows you to squeeze water through this pump right here. All you gotta do is pump it a couple times, creating water flow into your bucket. It's a great tool to easily maintain your betta tank. You don't have to put your hand in the water to create that initial flow for water changes, which also means less disruptions for your betta and much easier maintenance. Click the link in the description to check that out. Tip number 10 is to be aware of signs of stress or illness, and this is a big one because your betta is not going to suddenly drop one day. You're going to see warning signs that progress over time. One of the biggest factors when it comes to betta diseases is stress. A big portion of betta issues are due to stress-related factors like fin rot, dropsy, or bloat, and this could come in many different ways. For example, poor water quality is a common issue. I talked about that earlier, but you want to check your water on a regular basis to make sure parameters are good. Another common cause of stress is an improper environment. Make sure you're providing a good tank, plants, and everything. And finally, you want to make sure that you're not housing them with any tank mates that will stress them out. Some signs your betta is stressed out include faded colors, clamped fins, hiding, loss of appetite, trouble swimming. These are some common signs of a stressed betta. Essentially, what happens when a betta is stressed is their immunity is going to drop, they're not going to be as resilient, and you're going to see all sorts of things happen. A bonus tip I'm going to give is to provide your betta with some sort of enrichment. Betta fish are very interactive creatures, they're quite intelligent, and a great way to keep them happy is to provide some sort of stimuli to keep them enriched. And this could be as simple as adding a cave for them to explore, adding decorations like driftwood or live plants since they're constantly growing and not just stationary like the plastic ones. There's actually all sorts of betta accessories you could find off Amazon, including betta hammocks. Some people even like to give their betta a mirror for them to flare off of, just to provide that tiny bit of stimulation that keeps them active. You can also rearrange hardscape to make everything fresh again, and you'll see your betta re-exploring their tank. They're going to be super curious, and it's just really fun to see them interacting with their new environment. Keeping your betta active and enriched is most importantly going to help minimize stress, because these guys are very social, and providing stuff for them to interact with is going to keep your betta happy and in great shape. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe down below and let me know which one of these tips you found to be most useful.